Hey, how's it going, guys? Now, I want to talk about the cons of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I just did a video that talked about the pros of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and like things that I really took from positivity aspects of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because of the whole Sneeko versus that Mikey world champion. I don't want to butcher his last name, Musamechi or something like that. The kid who eats one pizza a day, like he trains jiu-jitsu and then eats pizza at night. And the guy's like an absolute stud on the BJJ mats, an absolute world champion, and he's just one of the best to ever do it. And I talked about on that video how there's a lot of good that could come from it. Like it gets you into building skills. It gets you into practicing other martial arts like boxing, Muay Thai, judo, wrestling. It also gets you to lift weights and be honest about your strength as a person. And that strength is going to help you level up in that sport. But having said that, there's like a lot of cons that are to this, and mainly the culture. And we see this a lot of times and times again, because although one of the cons though is like when people think that jiu-jitsu is the end all be all of martial arts, when you can focus so much on Brazilian jiu-jitsu that you forget your stand-up game if you want to competitively fight or you want to be a fighter or anything like that, because being on the feet is just as important as being on the ground, obviously. But sometimes the over-marketing of Brazilian jiu-jitsu can really hurt. And in fact, sometimes I think it leads a lot of the students astray where they forget the beauty of judo or the beauty of martial arts. Because honestly, I am a fan of judo. I recently started training that regularly because judo is a very proficient way to bring someone to the ground instead of pulling guard and ending up on the bottom of the ground. Now, I don't advertise violence or think that violence should be a first resort in public spheres, so don't quote me on that. But a lot of my cons from the jiu-jitsu come from a lot of the community and how they're such a supremacist over the jiu-jitsu fighting style that you really don't get very many cons or cons that are out there in the open, because I think a lot of people don't want to look at it honestly. They want to look at it like it's the ultimate club you should be a part of, and you're part of that club even though you're paying to be a part of that club. Because there could be a lot of cliques in the BJJ community, especially when the professors are part of those cliques. That affects the school, that affects the marketability, just because a lot of the times a lot of instructors do like to, not a lot, but some that I have seen like to act like the students owe them anything more than just paying them the tuition. Look, it's a business at the end of the day, but it's also service-based. If I'm not getting the quality training out of your school, I should be able to retract my payment and not be labeled a creanche. Now, here's the thing about creanche culture, because I actually did, like you've seen in my previous videos where I talk about this, I have switched gyms before because my first gym was just not giving me anything. Because the funny thing is like the professor at my first gym had a very nice front, had a very nice smile, but his actions really spoke differently. And when you saw him selecting who he wanted to train, primarily people who were his friends and people who he would want to hang out with, and if he never wanted to like you, you were kind of just dead in the water. I should have walked away from that dojo a long time ago, but I stuck with it because I thought the harder I worked, the more he was going to notice, but I was just burning myself out. But negligent coaching like that, because as soon as I stopped paying the bill over there, the real colors of a lot of those people really showed. Like they act like I had betrayed a family or something like that, which I really didn't. I just knew where I stood with that team currently, and then I trained under a different team. And when I switched to that team, which treats me like a family, which treats me like part of the crew, which doesn't make it all about the money, I was doing a lot better, and I even actively competed last year, and I won a lot of matches under these guys because they were giving me the lowdown of what I needed. And as I was working and developing my skills, guess what? I made friends along the way. It needs to be that way. Not the way of if you're our friend, then you get to train with us, because then you're going to be having people who don't compete. You're going to have less competitors on the team, because that last team I was part of, from what I saw, it was hard for them to keep consistent competitors because it wasn't so much about them being, like that, right? It was about having a friend group and having a clique, and that's not what jiu-jitsu should be about by any means necessary. I honestly think they like to say that, no, it's not about strength, when no, jiu-jitsu is a lot about strength. A lot of these techniques are not magical, and they don't always, get you out of the jam, but the stronger you are, the more effective you are at it. Like, I don't know why that's such a shock to a lot of people. Plus, trying to win a fight off your back in a real street fight would not work that way. Like, even like Aljamain Sterling in his last grappling match, he had a clip that went viral where he talked about, like, you shouldn't be able to win a fight off of your butt like that, like butt scooting and everything. I watched a UFC fight where a guy was fighting Dan Hooker and he was busy butt scooting, and he ended up losing the match because he was so busy butt scooting. This whole lay on your back thing, now me, when I'm sparring with that new guy who just doesn't know what he's doing, I know that he's going to try and pull something that all it takes is a split second for him to hurt himself or me. Then I'll probably sit down and just take him down from underneath. But in an actual match where people know what they are doing, right? I don't like pulling guard. I don't like doing that. I like to shoot for takedowns. I like people to shoot for takedowns on me. It's just fair that way. Plus, being taken down is not that bad. Maybe getting launched in a judo throw is probably a little bit more intense, but you'll live as long as you keep your arms and legs compacted. But I feel like a lot of the ways that people train jiu-jitsu, although I get that it's safer and you have work to come to, and honestly, please look after your health above anything. If you don't want to train with a certain person, I don't recommend you train with a certain person because there are bad training partners out there. You don't have to say yes to every role. You don't have to go with every new guy because those people are a bit of a loaded gun. And that's another con, is there's a lot of people who go into jiu-jitsu and try and take advantage of the culture, take advantage of the community so that they can have power and leverage over other people. It does attract a lot of good goal-oriented people, but it attracts a lot of sadistic and power-hungry individuals who want nothing more than to just leave a wake of devastation in their path. I've seen some very psychotic people take jiu-jitsu. I've seen some very dangerous people learn how to do those techniques and take pleasure in it. Now, that's not everybody who trains the sport, but you got to be aware that that kind of stuff is out there. And last but not least, the value of the belts kind of ruins Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I was a white belt for a while, and I was actually underranked for quite some time. I just got my blue belt last December, and when I got it, everyone said it was a long time coming because even now as a blue belt, I was able to tap out a few purple belts. So now my rank is even more questioned, and that's why I really don't take the belts as seriously. But what I'm talking about, and that's not just to gloat, but it's here to set a baseline, because let me tell you a story. In my first gym, the belts were kind of handed out to the people who were the professor's favorites from what I've seen. Now, yes, they did have some skill to go with it, but if he didn't like you or he didn't view you in any special way, per se, he was going to just kind of like disregard you. He was not going to give you a belt. And there were a lot of times where people were like leveling up throughout the belts, and I was just kind of kept at that little cap. And when I asked, I didn't ask for the belt, but I asked what sets me aside from being here and being to that skill level. I had my words twisted, and I was punished for even asking that question. And that's another thing about jiu-jitsu that I have a problem with, is like this whole, you should be able to ask your professor questions about where you stand. What would get me from here to there? Like, what do you think I should work on to get from here to there, right? And you'd be surprised that there's a lot of professors who don't necessarily like even being asked that, because it's just almost like, sometimes I feel like I get that sometimes it's disrespectful, but I think that it's also very respectful to ask honest questions and to be transparent, whether it's in a gym relationship, a relationship with a significant other, any sort of business relationship. Transparency is respect, and you should know where each other stand with one another. But when you can't do that with your sensei or your professor, there's an issue right there. And sometimes that could just be a double meaning under, where it's just like, I want to focus on my competitors, and I want other people to kind of just say, you know what, I don't want my other guys that I want as fuel to keep the lights on to question my methods, because I want to keep the money rolling in. If you're a professor and you have a lot of students, do what mine does and hire other black belts to really guide them, because that's the one thing about my new school that I really like, is he has a lot of seasoned black belts there working under him who offer just as good of guidance as he would, because he's got a competition class that competes worldwide in circuits. And you know what? He doesn't come down on me for asking me what I could do to better my game. In fact, when I came forward and I asked him, what do you think would be the number one thing to help my game? He laid it out for me, and he thanked me for asking that. And that's why I'm with this guy right now. So there are good dojos that don't have this toxic, backstabby, cutthroat attitude where it becomes money grub, because I think the money sometimes can ruin the sport. Because even though I know that it's not the end-all be-all, the sport has a lot of value, and a lot of corruption, a lot of entitlement from the professors can sometimes ruin it. So obviously, here in these cons, which are mainly just communal things, clickiness, what I recommend people do, pick your dojo wisely. Don't focus on the belts, though, because sometimes those belts are either paid for through tests, or some people are underranked, and then you get some people who are just overranked and we're giving them because they were there long enough, but they just don't have business there. And I would not want to be a black belt at this point, because I know I'm not a black belt, right? I know that I just stand as a blue belt who's tapping purples, and I'm giving browns trouble, right? But other than that, I don't care if I get that next belt yet or not, because hey, you know what? I'm kind of satisfied at the blue one, and it was kind of just for me about not being kept at the bottom and patronized like I was at my last gym, and I broke that patronization cycle, and I'm very grateful for it. But like I said, guys, those are the cons. Pick your team wisely so you don't have to face the cons, because if you're going into a sport that is meant to build you up or show you some lessons about not just jiu-jitsu, but how you can better your life overall and different habits you can pick up into your life, I think that it's tragic when corruption, entitlement, cliques get in the way and just ruin something like Muay Thai, boxing, jiu-jitsu, judo, any type of combat sports. Because sometimes it's just human nature that corrupts a lot of things. But that's basically my 2-part video. I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching. And when you're going to sign up on that waiver, which I do recommend jiu-jitsu, I know, like I said, it's got its holes, but it's definitely worth training just for your own personal development. Stay safe. Pick the right school. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.